Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to All Praise Picks. Today we're looking at the NFL. We have Thursday Night Football with the Rams playing the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco on December 12th, 2024. Currently, the Rams are 7 and 6, which is second place in the NFC West, and the 49ers are 6 and 7, which is fourth place in the NFC West, but they are just one game behind first place. And I do think that this will be a pretty great matchup. Usually, when these teams match up against each other, whether it's in San Francisco or Los Angeles, it's always a great game, especially with great quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford and Brock Purdy playing. Before I get into my breakdown of this game and my parlays for you guys, I'll give a quick recap of what happened in our Monday Night Football video. So I went 3 and 4 in my parlays, ended up gaining 3.45 units. Shout out to Chase Brown and Jamar Chase for the Bengals. They really balled out, and Jamar Chase especially had a masterclass game. Looking at my losses, I just think T. Higgins just was phased out of the offense with Trayvon Diggs uh, being back in the starting lineup for the Dallas Cowboys, and that allowed Jamar Chase to just have a phenomenal game. And also, I had a pretty good read on Rico Dowdle. I didn't expect him to have as much rushing yards, but I did have him to have under 16 and a half passing yards, or I guess receiving yards from the quarterback, and he did that. But just a few of those other legs that I included with it were unable to hit. But um, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow played well, and we were able to get a little bit less than 3.5 units from our Monday Night Football video, and I hope to continue that momentum into this Thursday night game on Week 15. So looking at Matthew Stafford and the Rams offense, on the season, the Rams are a top 10 pass offense and a bottom 10 defense overall, and their rush offense is kind of middle of the pack. I do like Kyron Williams as a running back, but I do think in this game it'll be more of Matthew Stafford passing the ball rather than the Rams running the ball, especially against the 49ers defense. But I do want to mention that the Rams defense is pretty bad, especially in comparison to the 49ers. And if you guys were watching the Rams versus Bills game, you could see that Josh Allen could pretty much get whatever he wanted when it came to running the ball and passing the ball. And I do think that Kyle Shanahan, the coach of the 49ers, will be able to see uh, the deficiencies in the Rams defense and will probably attack it using Brock Purdy as well as their running backs. So when I was researching the 49ers defense, I compared their statistics from last season home and away to this season home and away. And overall, I did notice that they are better at home than away, which is probably true for most defenses. But I just think that their defense in comparison to how they were playing last season is a definite step down. And I do think that the Rams will be able to have some success here passing the ball. The 49ers actually do have a top three passing defense statistically, but they are vulnerable to good quarterbacks. I do think that Matthew Stafford is a pretty good quarterback in his own right. And even though the numbers say to probably run the ball versus the 49ers and limit the possessions that the 49ers offense has, I just think that Sean McVay will probably lean upon Matthew Stafford to continue passing the ball to Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, who are their best playmakers on their offensive side. But I do want to note that this season their rush defense is worse than it was last season, and also their red zone defense is pretty bad. I think they're within the top five worst red zone defenses, which isn't really common for a 49ers team. And I do think that if the Rams get into the red zone, they likely will score touchdowns rather than field goals. I did mention the big play potential of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Both of these receivers have just been going off this season, especially Puka Nacua, and it's really good when they're both on the field together, especially for Matthew Stafford to be able to facilitate the offense. And they'll be both playing in this game. I kind of stayed away from their props just because Puka Nacua's props are very high right now, given his last game versus the um, Bills, where he went over 100 and I believe 140 yards. Yeah, he had 162 yards in that game on 12 receptions. But Cooper Kupp is also uh, capable of having just as good as a game as Puka Nacua. So I kind of just stayed away from their props because I couldn't really tell which receiver would go off in this one. But if I had to pick, I probably would lean Cooper Kupp just because of the coverage matchups that the 49ers defense has, and it probably does favor Cooper Kupp more as he's able to get into space and get open when facing man coverage more often than Puka Nacua. I also think that this is a potential letdown spot after a great win versus the Bills. Uh, so the Rams they play that game at home and then now are traveling to San Francisco on a short week to play the 49ers, who are familiar with them. And I think the 49ers will come in with more desperation in this game. when you look at the playoff potential implications of this game, uh, if the 49ers lose this game, they pretty much are eliminated from being able to go to the playoffs. And if the Rams win this game, uh, they pretty much secure their spot in the playoffs and have a pretty good chance of winning their division, especially if they're able to have a better record than the Seahawks. But I just think that with the desperation and listening to the quotes from the media from like Brock Purdy saying that this is a game where we have to just come in desperate and throw everything at the wall. I just think that the Rams may be caught off guard, especially in the first half of this game, and will be playing from behind and we'll probably lose this game, given that the 49ers are playing at home and do play well at home, especially in prime time. So now looking at the 49ers offense, you got to start with Brock Purdy, who's their quarterback. I just think that the offense is pretty good when Purdy's good. They have a top 10 pass and rush offense overall in the NFL, and that's even uh, without Christian McCaffrey playing for several games, Debo Samuel and George Kittle missing games as well, and they lost Brandon Ayuk, who was their number one wide receiver. So um, this offense is a great system to play in, and I think that when Brock Purdy is playing well, the system is running very smoothly. I did type that this is a run a running back type of offense. So Isaac Guerrero is playing with a foot sprain, but they're bringing up guys from the practice squad, and their fourth and fifth string running backs will be in this game. So I tended to stay away from Guerrero and his props. I'm unsure of how healthy he is in this one, and I just think that Brock Purdy will probably be the one passing the ball more often than they run the ball, and especially since the Rams defense is pretty poor against the pass. I think that Debo and George Kittle will have a pretty good game in this one. Also, looking at the weather report, there's a potential for rain, and I think that favors Debo's dynamic elusiveness with the ball in his hands, as well as George Kittle to make big plays. So these are the first two parlays that I have. They're focused on Brock Purdy stats. Starting with the one on the left side at an even plus 100, I have Brock Purdy to have over 200 passing yards and over 21 completions, as well as for George Kittle to have 25 receiving yards in this game. So Brock Purdy in his last game versus the Rams, he had 22 completions on 30 attempts for 292 yards and three touchdowns and zero interceptions. And he also had 41 rushing yards. I'm unsure how many rushing yards he'll have in this one. The Rams do have a pretty good pass rush, and Purdy has been running the ball more often, and especially with the injuries to the running back position, uh, he could have rushing a lot more rushing attempts than usual in this game. But his lines on BetMGM to have 25 plus rushing yards is just a little bit too high for me to include into a parlay because if he doesn't want to run the ball, he can just decide to throw it away, or um, even if he tries to run and get sacked, that counts as a decrease in his rushing yards. So I just wanted to stay away from those possibilities. But going back to his last game versus the Rams, um, so that game was without Debo Samuel, without George Kittle, and without Christian McCaffrey. And he still was able to put up those numbers. And I think that with the addition of Debo and Kittle in this game, he should be able to have a similar or even better game than he did in his last game versus the Rams. In that game, Juwan Jennings had an incredible game. He was very like Jamar Chase like with 11 receptions, 175 yards, and three touchdowns. And I think that the ball will be spread out more, especially with Debo and Kittle on the field with Jennings. But I think that Brock Purdy should still be able to have a good game against this Rams defense that he has proven that he can have good games against, and now being at home, he should be able to get easier completions to all of his receivers. Also at home, he's had over 200 yards in every single game, so I think that um, if he is passing the ball often, he'll get over 200 yards, which is why I have him to have over 21 completions on the parlay on the left side. But looking at the parlay on the right side, I do have him to have instead of the 21 completions, just to not throw an interception. I think that the big play potential of Debo Kittle and even Juwan Jennings to his own extent could get Purdy over the 200 passing yards, and he doesn't necessarily have to have 21 completions to get that, which is why I put these parlays side by side so you can decide for yourself. I do like both of them. And now looking at George Kittle, lastly, I have him to have over 25 receiving yards. So he's had over 40 yards in every single game at home this season, and at least four catches in every game at home. So he is a common target for Brock Purdy, especially when Kittle is playing. And I also like his longest reception prop too, if you can get that on a different sports book. Uh, Outside of the Bills game, he's had a reception of over 30 yards in six out of his last seven games. And in the one game that he didn't was the Bills game where he only had one reception. And they were playing in a snowstorm in Buffalo, New York. The weather does call for a little bit of rain in this one, but I think that um, it kind of does favor Kittle's play type, which is um, I think he's more sporadic as a tight end, but he can make big plays out of nowhere and can really flip the field, especially if he gets ahead of steam when he catches the ball. So I do like him to have over 25 receiving yards, and I do think that he likely will have over 4 or 5 catches in this game, which will allow him to get over that. But these two parlays at plus 100 and plus 120 essentially are just even plus money plays. If you invest 1 unit on the parlay on the left side, you have a 100% return on your investment. And if you invest 1 unit on the right side, you have a 120% return on your investment. And I would just suggest having bankroll consciousness and an overall understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets if you decide to place it with me. So these are the next two parlays that I have. They are higher odds, starting with the one at plus 160. They're focused on really Matthew Stafford's statistics that I think that he'll generate in this game. So I do have the Rams to have under 28 and a half total points in this one. Honestly, I could see the Rams scoring 4 touchdowns, and I could see the Rams scoring like 13 points in this game. It kind of is a toss-up when it comes to the Rams, especially playing against 49ers defense that has played very well at home and even played well in the first quarter of their game versus the Rams, where they ended that quarter with a 14-0 lead. But that led to Matthew Stafford having to pass the ball and increasing his likelihood of having pass attempts. I do think that Stafford does play better with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, as I mentioned before. But I just feel like in this game, something has to give, whether it is the 49ers' top 3 pass defense or the Rams' offense kind of just regressing back to normal. And I think that after having a huge game versus the Bills, they put a lot of offensive concepts on film that the 49ers could use to their advantage and limit in this game. I also like Matthew Stafford to have over 34 pass attempts in this one. I think especially if the 49ers are able to get to a fast start, it would just call for Stafford to have to throw the ball, especially in the late second quarter and into the second half of the game. And I think in his last game without Kupp and Puka, he had, this is versus the 49ers, he had 16 completions on 25 attempts for 221 yards and 1 touchdown. And I think that their game plan was really just to control the clock and run the ball because they didn't have their top 2 receivers. And now that they have their top 2 receivers, I think that he'll throw the ball more often. He's also had over 200 yards in 4 of his last 5 games. And in the one game that he didn't have over 200 yards was against the New Orleans Saints. And I was watching that game because the Saints are my favorite team. And I just realized that they had a similar game script to the one that they had in their first matchup versus the 49ers, which was let's run the ball, wind down the clock, and then get out of this game with a win. And they were able to do that versus the 49ers. Unfortunately, they were able to do that against the Saints. And I think that if they are to do it in this game, it actually calls for a different game script. So that's a parlay at plus 160. If you invest 1 unit on the parlay on the left side, you'll have a 160% return on your investment. Like I said, I could see the Rams being able to score in this game or not being able to score at all and just the 49ers blowing them out, which is why I only put half a unit on this one. And I also put half a unit on the parlay on the right side, which is a plus 320 parlay. And they're just focused on the pass completions. I think that both offenses will probably lean towards throwing the ball. And regardless of whoever's leading or losing in the game, I think it would be to their advantage to throw the ball rather than to run the ball. The Rams have a pretty good front seven, so I think that especially without Christian McCaffrey and with Garendo having an injury, it'll probably call for Brock Purdy to throw the ball. And with the addition of George Kittle and Deebo Samuel in this game, who they didn't have in their last game, I think that Purdy will probably have easier completions. And same for Matthew Stafford. He has 16 completions without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua in this last game versus the 49ers. So I think he very well could go over 30 completions in this game, especially if he's passing the ball at a very high rate. So I do like his number at over 23. But at plus 320, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, you have a 320% return on your investment, which is a great return on investment, especially if the parlay hits. But I always limit my bankroll, especially when the odds get up. So I put half a unit on this one as well for technically 1 unit total on Matthew Stafford props. So yeah, just always have bankroll consciousness and an overall understanding of your finances when deciding to place this bet if you do decide to place it with me. So this is the next parlay that I have at plus 125, and it's focused on Deebo Samuel stats. Uh, so Debo Samuel, he's having a down year, but I think this is a great bounce back spot for him, which is why I like his rushing and receiving yards in this game. So I took him to have over 16 rushing yards and to have over 50 combined rushing and receiving yards by the end of the game. So looking at Debo's game history versus the Rams, he's had over 90 total yards in 4 out of the last 5 games versus the Rams. And in the game that he went under, it was on January 7th of 2024. He had 21 receiving yards and 11 rushing yards on one attempt. So that would be 33 total yards. And I think that, especially with the injuries to Christian McCaffrey and potentially to Garindo, he will likely have the ball in his hands more often, especially as a runner. So I do like him to have over 16 rushing yards in this game. Uh, Also, in those games where he went over 90 total yards, he had a touchdown in each of the games, and he's had 5 total touchdowns in that 5 game span versus the uh, Rams. So I do like his potential of scoring a touchdown in this game, which you'll see in the next parlay. Overall, I just think the data favors Debo's yards. And if you guys are aware of his comments in the media, he was calling to get the ball more often, and that was after a blowout win versus the Chicago Bears in his last game. So I do think that, especially if Brock Purdy is true on his comments of saying that he wants to get he wants to get Debo the ball more often. I think Debo will be in good order here to get the ball in his hands as a runner and as a receiver. Also, I mentioned the potential weather of this game, and I think that it just favors the type of player that Debo is, especially if the ground is too slick for the defense to be able to um, cut or um, like respond to the jukes that he has. He would probably have a really big play in this game, and I think whether that play is coming from rushing or receiving, he likely will have over 50 rushing and receiving yards in this game, and I do like him to have over 75 if you would prefer to take that at, I think, even money. But at plus 125, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, you have a 125% return on your investment, which is a great return on investment, especially if the parlay wins. And as always, just have bankroll consciousness and an overall understanding of your finances when deciding to do so. So these are the last 3 parlays that I have. Uh, Starting with the parlay on the left side, I think it's just a great value play. I do think the Rams should be able to score at least 2 touchdowns in this game, and if they're able to score 3 touchdowns, they likely will be able to make the extra points. So to have a parlay, or it's not even a parlay, it's just a straight bet of at plus 115 for the Rams kicker to make over 3 extra points. I think it's just a pretty good value play where even if the touchdown comes from a defensive fumble recovery to a touchdown or a punt return or kick return to a touchdown, that all counts towards his kicking points as long as he's making the extra point. So I put half a unit on that one. And then I have these 2 long shot parlays that I just kind of like to make when I'm watching football. And I put half a unit total on these parlays. So look at the parlay on the right side at plus 1,450. I put $15 on that parlay, so I have Matthew Stafford to have over 250 passing yards and over 2 passing touchdowns. So Stafford, he's had over 2 passing touchdowns in each of his last 4 games. And I think that the 49ers red zone defense is bottom 10 in the NFL right now. And I think they are very vulnerable to scoring uh, touchdowns via the air, especially with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua playing as well as they have been playing lately. But instead of taking Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua to score the touchdown, I took Kyren Williams because I think that if the Rams are able to get the ball down the field, there are so many instances in which Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua catches the ball and they're within the 5 yard line, and then they give it to Kyren Williams 2 tries and he gets it in. He's a great running back out of Notre Dame. Always been a fan of him, and I think that his odds of scoring a touchdown are pretty high in this one. I also noticed that the 49ers give up the 4th most rushing touchdowns to the running back position, so they've been vulnerable to the running back position, especially in the red zone all year. Kyren Williams also has 12 touchdowns this season and 3 straight games with a touchdown. So if you're a person that likes just to bet single bets, I think a Kyren Williams touchdown is a pretty good bet as well. I also took Debo Samuel to score a touchdown. As I mentioned, I think that this is a great matchup for him to bounce back, and um, he's had a touchdown in 4 out of his last 5 games versus the Rams, and 5 total touchdowns during that span. So I do think that whether it's via the air as a receiver or as a running back, which I do expect him to have more attempts rushing the ball, he probably will be able to get a touchdown as long as he's more involved in this offense. And I do think that the Rams defense has been bad all year, and the 49ers offense, while they have to adjust with the injuries that they have to Christian McCaffrey and to Brandon Ayuk, um, this game does kind of call for Debo to have a bounce back game, and if his comments to the media are true, he likely will probably be the first one to score a touchdown for the 49ers. And if you like those kind of bets, I do like that one as a first touchdown scorer bet um, as well. But now focusing on the last leg of these parlays. So on the left side, I have the 49ers to uh, not be losing by more than 3 points at the end of the first half. The 49ers have been a pretty good first half team, especially in the first quarter. They were up 14-0 in the first quarter of their game versus the Rams, and then at halftime they were up 14-7. The Rams ultimately did come back to win that game 27-24, which is why I prefer to take the 49ers in the first half, because with their offensive play calling and just catching the defense off guard, especially being at home, it does favor the 49ers offense rather than the Rams defense. And I like the 49ers offense at home more than the Rams offense, who I think could have a letdown spot in this game. So looking at the last leg of the parlay on the right side, before I close out this video, I took the total of the game to go over 45.5. I do think that this would probably hit, especially if both teams are able to score 20 points in this game. If both teams score 20 points, then we just need to have 2 field goals being kicked. So if the score of the game is 26-20, it would win. Even if the game is tied going into the end of the fourth quarter and the game goes into overtime, if one team scores a touchdown, then the score would be 26-20, which would cash us over. So I do like that over 45.5 as kind of like a key number, especially in football. And I do think that as long as both offenses are able to move the ball down the field like relatively efficiently, that both teams will probably score over 17 points in this game, and then the additional points will probably come from the 49ers, in my opinion. But at looking at the parlay on the left side, at plus 1,450, if you invest 1 unit on that parlay, you have a return on investment of 1,450%, which is why I only put $15 on the parlay. And then on the parlay on the right side at plus 1,000, if you invest 1 unit on that parlay, you have a return of 1,000%. And I put 15 on the left and 10 on the right side to equate to half a unit total, $25 on these bets. And they're long shot parlays. Usually you're not supposed to hit these parlays, but if you have a good idea of the game script, then you can definitely win parlays like this. I've done it in the past before, and I'd be excited if it happens again in this one. But I appreciate you guys for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and share this video, and subscribe to my channel. Stay tuned for more NFL videos coming out towards the end of this week, as well as NBA videos coming out later today, and a Chimney Challenge video coming out later this evening as well. But until next time, peace.